Life isn't about avoiding the bruises. It's about collecting the scars to prove that we showed up for it. Join Nikki Seberini for the next hour as she explores heroism through illness. There is a warrior inside each of us. This is Lifelinks with the DL Link. Lifelinks is a funding initiative of the DL Link.
Thank you for staying with us. This is the DL Link Show on 101.9 Chai FM, where we connect you through insights, information, and illumination. We're moving on, talking about chronic pain. Cayley Alberts, an occupational therapist at the Center of Psychotherapy Excellence, COPE, and manager at Neck Care, Akiso George, is here to talk about chronic pain, which hurts both physically and psychologically. We're going to be addressing the unseen pain of depression, emotional exhaustion, and isolation. Cayley, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Nikki. Thank you so much. It's awesome to be here today.
Oh, it's wonderful to have you, Cayley. When we talk pain, I think people, as you hear pain, you almost want to contract, because that's what happens when we experience pain. And pain comes on many levels. There's this emotional pain and there's this physical pain. And of course, there's acute and chronic pain. And perhaps that's where we can start with the difference between acute and chronic, because we're focusing on chronic pain. And what is the difference?
Yeah, absolutely, Nikki. So I think acute pain is more what's known. It's more what we speak about in terms of soft tissue injury. It's, I want to say, normal injuries that heal quite quickly, whereas chronic pain is pain that extends over a longer time period, normally about just over 3 months, and often even after an injury is healed, the pain can actually still persist, even sometimes without an identifiable cause. So prolonged for a long time period, and very much after an injury is healed. That's kind of where we see it.
And when someone has chronic pain, so they've had an injury, the injury, they've had the treatment or whatever, as you say, but the pain persists. Let's just talk about the psychological impact that this can have on a person, on their family, when they are constantly in pain.
So I think, Nikki, sure, I think there is so much more to that question than we even realize. And just in terms of my work and what I've seen and been exposed to, chronic pain has a massive impact, from as simple as sleeping habits, energy levels being affected, eating habits, appetite being affected, significant social withdrawal, so people start to isolate, withdraw quite a lot, stop taking part in as many activities, specifically sport-related, often having a big negative impact on mood. And of course, within the working class, if one struggles with chronic pain, it massively influences productivity at work and work attendance, and as a result, often becoming more dependent on others. So massive impact in so many different areas.
So let's unpack this a little bit, Cayley, when it comes to what part the mind plays in the pain that you have, because I'm so careful about it, because pain is pain, and it's not that you've decided that you want to be in pain. I don't know if you've read Nicole Sachs's book, Mind Over Body. And of course, the body keeps the score, where trauma and emotional repression play a huge, huge role in chronic pain. So when someone, we are talking about mental health as well, when someone turns around and says, get over it, or it's just psychosomatic, what are your thoughts on that?
Sure. I think, Nikki, we see that so often, and I think it's so often human nature to sometimes respond in that way. But I think until you've experienced chronic pain yourself, do you realize there's so much underneath there. And I think there's so much of an invisible aspect. If you think of something like a broken leg, where you can see someone suffering, you can see them struggling, and as a result, we help them in the wheelchair, we help them cross the road on their crutches. Vastly different to someone who's struggling with chronic pain, where so much is, I think, unseen. And similar to, I think, what we chat about with the stigma of mental health, it's something that's suffered in silence. Often people are embarrassed to speak up about it. They feel ashamed of experiencing the pain, or they almost just feel it's easier to kind of suffer in silence alone. So I think it's so misunderstood, and very much overlooked to a large extent.
Yeah, I mean, Saskia was saying, as you say, the exact same thing, this invisible injury, these invisible issues, which is why for her, Headway was so important to realize that she wasn't alone and that she was supported. And so that would be a question that I want to ask, because at Ikiso, I mean, if you have someone who's experiencing physical pain, there's just no way to escape it. There's no way to, and a lot of the pain that you experience is kind of like the anticipation of the pain. And if you look at someone's body when they're in pain, there's such a contraction. It's so difficult to relax when you're in pain, as you say, impacting all areas of your life. So what is it that you do at Ikiso with people who are experiencing chronic pain? Is just simply knowing that there's a support system, talking about it, or is there more?
So, sure, Nikki, so true what you're saying. So it's very much a multidisciplinary approach. It's not just one area of support. So at Ikiso and in different facilities, I think very much the doctors obviously always involved, and in our case it would be the psychiatrist that's involved. And normally the occupational therapist, so that's where I would often become involved, helps with, I want to say, all spheres of a person's life, but the biggest one being supporting a person and actually becoming more functional again amongst the pain. So instead of trying to completely just get rid of it, saying, how can I build a meaningful life even with the pain? Because specifically, often chronic pain does not completely reduce or does not completely go away. So how can I create, I want to say, like a life worth living, a meaningful life amongst this, where I can still be a functional person at work or as a mother or as a wife, to be able to function in society considering the pain I'm experiencing. So at the same time, often physios, biokineticists are also involved. I want to say it's quite patient specific and very much dependent on the chronic pain they've experienced for how long. But in general, very much a MDT, multidisciplinary approach, and very much walking a journey with a patient. I think similar to what Saskia said, it's a long road, but just making that person feel supported and that their pain is real, that it's a real experience, and validating that is a big one.
And sharing it, because, yeah, you feel like possibly very few people out there understand you, and you just want to be able to talk about it, and they've had enough of it as well. And you need to take it into a space where there are people who really, really understand and can hold that for you. So it's amazing, the multidisciplinary team. And I was wondering if, something like mindfulness or breath work would be something that you would include or be open to.
Absolutely, Nikki. Mindfulness would be a massive one, specifically because anxiety and depression are such significant factors in pain, and mindfulness plays a very helpful role in depression, anxiety. So it has a big overlap from both those directions. But even of what you previously mentioned, a lot of therapy is directed towards fear avoidance, which is fear of the pain flaring up again. Addressing avoidance behavior, where I'm stopping taking part in activities because I'm so scared that the pain is going to get worse, or I'm just going to kind of exacerbate my symptoms. So there's a lot of aspects there with trying to understand the fear behind it, and how stopping doing the activities I've loved, how has that started to affect me? Because normally that has then a ripple effect on my mental health as well. So it's kind of goes bi-directional, actually, with the mental health and with the chronic pain.
Yeah. And I think a way of, expanding that fear avoidance for people who are listening, just the understanding of when an uncomfortable feeling comes up for you, how we want to avoid it. When it's an emotion, we want to avoid it. And imagine on a physical level, this acute physical pain and, being in the space of wanting to avoid it. And so I was asking about the mindfulness because I was so interested in, John Kabat-Zinn. He's kind of seen as the father of Westernized mindfulness. I think he brought mindfulness to his institute. Was it in the 60s or 70s in the basement of a hospital? And he worked quite specifically with people who experience pain, and with mindfulness doing just that. The avoidance, mindfulness is the turning towards that pain and softening the edges. So being with it and allowing it to be there, which sounds so intimidating and scary, and shifting things, actually reducing pain, the experience of pain, and breath work as well. Breath work with particular focused breath work exercises. And I don't think that breath work's been explored nearly enough, reducing pain receptors through breath work, just knowing that people have the power within that pain to manage themselves, manage their breath, manage the moment. And it kind of, it goes into that invisible realm, and maybe some people will go, oh my goodness, that's so woo-woo. But, this is where so much healing can take place, Cayley. And I suppose there's so many gray areas when it comes to this, right?
Sure, absolutely, Nikki. And if I think in terms of what you're saying there, when a person experiences pain, there is massive nervous system dysregulation where you're feeling overwhelmed, you're struggling to cope. And exactly what you're saying, that's where breath work and mindfulness helps to produce the opposite. And I think that's where the vagus nerve has a massive impact or massive role to play. Yeah. And through mindfulness, trying to regulate your system or regulate your nervous system to try have a little bit more control, manage the pain, plays a massive role. And I think that's why external factors like having a lot of stress, being a very anxious person only exacerbates those symptoms. Mm. In terms of the fear avoidance, I think a big aspect of addressing chronic pain is so often the fear of, if I'm doing activity and I'm causing pain, I'm creating damage, I'm damaging my body in some way. Yet often in chronic pain, there is no damage. It's those pathways in our brain, we've created this response where we get stuck in a pain response. So it's not to say we're not experiencing the pain, but pain does not necessarily equal I'm damaging my body. And that, I almost want to say, to wrestle with that sounds so weird and sounds so unusual. So a lot of the time it's actually sitting with patients and explaining that setup and explaining basic pain education to reduce that fear response, to help them become more functional.
Yeah. I mentioned it a little bit earlier. I came across Nicole Sachs. I don't know if you've read it. And her book is called Mind Your Body. And she went from experiencing chronic back pain from a young age to using journaling to to reduce the amount of repressed emotion that was causing her nervous system to create pain. And it's absolutely fascinating. And, as you say, there's so many ways of dealing with things. So what are your thoughts on the role that repressed emotions plays on our nervous system, triggering a pain response in order to avoid an emotional pain cascade?
Sure. I think there's a massive link there, Nikki. I think, and with so many different emotions, and in order to regulate your system, it's exactly what you're saying, like using journaling to reflect and to be able to process an emotion helps someone with a complete opposite approach. So by repressing our emotions, whether it's anger, whether it's fear, whether it's guilt, actually creates or causes our body to actually be stuck. We call it either a sympathetic response, or almost like a dorsal vagal response, which is all part of your vagus nerve. So either I get stuck in this massive fight or flight response where I'm so anxious, I'm so overwhelmed, and that is often where the pain creeps in. And again, that psychosomatic kind of how it works together. And I was thinking back to the book you also referred to, That Body Keeps the Score, how linking with trauma, linking with traumatic events, difficult emotions, things like loss and grief, where there's so much unknown and unspoken about of how much our body holds emotion. And through things like journaling, through things like therapy, why psychologists play such a massive role. And it's not just the physical aspect, which is the most spoken of, which is the physios and the bios, but yet the emotional, if those are addressed, where I can talk about my feelings, I can talk about my emotions and what I'm struggling with, the link with that, with a reduction in pain response, is incredible.
Yeah, just it's so vast, which is why, this multidisciplinary team approach is so important, because it's not just one, it's all of these factors that come together. And I think that, because we have to end right now, but I think, Cayley, that what's important for people who are experiencing chronic pain is that they're not alone, and they shouldn't tackle this alone. And that there are support groups and there's help out there, just as we were saying with Saskia beforehand. So do all of the Netcare Akisos offer teams and support for chronic pain, or is it just specifically George?
No, all of the branches, Nikki. So that's all from the Western Cape, Gauteng, all over. And I think we have tons of branches all over the country. So because there's such a massive overlap with mental health, all the branches would address it, and there would be support systems and therapy provided in all the different setups and branches throughout the country, for sure.
Fantastic. We've just scratched the surface, but I think that if listeners walk away realizing that, pain is not a punishment, and pain, there are great support systems out there to help you with the pain, and what an impact it can have on your life and those around you and the way you live your life. So don't face it alone. There are all these different ways of supporting yourself or those people that you love. I think that's so important. So, Cayley, thank you very much for joining us. We really loved having you on the show today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nikki. Have a lovely day.
Thanks, and you too. Bye-bye. Cayley Alberts, occupational therapist, the Centre of Psychotherapy Excellence. That's COPE and manager at Netcare Akiso George. Chronic pain hurts physically and psychologically, and you are not alone with that. You are not alone. I really, really hope that you got a sense with today's show, from mental illness and traumatic brain injuries and chronic pain, and the crossover between what's felt in the body and what's experienced mentally and emotionally, and how they all come together, and that reaching out, having a support system, getting the right team to support you is vital on your journey to recovery. And it's not an easy journey. So I thank you so much for tuning in. It's been really wonderful being with you. I just want to remind you that the wonderful center, the DL Link Center, which is nearly finished, is still going up. Those rooms are still being built. And of course, we're looking at that wig room, a state-of-the-art wig room for those who are going through therapy, losing their hair and looking for support. So if you would like to take part in supporting the DL Link with that, you can contact them directly on 485-3269, 011-485-3269. For me, Nikki Seberini, until next week, you take care and goodbye.